All right. Good to meet you, my dear friend, Chima Christian. It's such a pleasure to be able to have this meeting with you and dialogue with you. Honestly,
Thank you.
I've seen your presentations on Facebook, YouTube, Arise, and I'm so fascinated with the way you think. And above all, that you believe in the Creator God, and your relationship comes through in your writings, and your passion for people, especially Nigeria.
Thank
Let me
you.
tell you a little bit about myself. I am an author, a self-published author. I've written several books, and a couple of them have won awards. And I I'm retired. I worked with the Superior Court of New Jersey and the probation department. So I rose from probation officer all the way to assistant chief of probation, and our job mainly was rehabilitating offenders. And throughout my 30 years in the department, it's rehabilitating offenders. And that really got my interest in the human personhood, what drives the human person. And if you know what drives them, perhaps you can interject things that they may have missed in their life's journey that could actually redirect them to be more law-abiding citizens. It was a job that I did with great joy, and most of my field work was on juvenile supervision. So I dealt with a lot of juvenile issues, which was actually good because then you really see the human development from earlier on before you become an adult. And the last 3 years, I've just been enjoying my retirement. Writing, of course, never took my eyes away from my other passion, which I think is the other thing that God led me to. So whatever experience I've gathered over the years, both from Nigeria, my childhood was I was born in Ubiaja, Edo State, Nigeria. I schooled in Lagos, worked in Lagos before I went to Canada for my higher education. I did my youth service at Enugu, Central Bank, Enugu. Then I went back to Lagos, worked in Lagos a little bit, got married, came back to America. So that's a snapshot of who I am.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. I mean, if I were to summarize what I heard now, I would see that it's an eventful life. It's also colorful, and then also dotted with service. So it's a life of service, and then especially when you mentioned that you worked with juveniles, and then you also worked as a probation officer trying to correct or rehabilitate offenders. And so that tells me that it's also a life that is dedicated in the service of the society and the
Mhm.
service of God through what you do. And so I'll thank you for your introduction. My name is Chima Christian. I was born in Nnewi, Anambra State. I schooled in Nnewi, primary, secondary in Nnewi. And I tried my hands at, I was, on my way to become a medical doctor. So my parents arranged, and but as you would have it, just a few months before my work, I got that moment of epiphany where I said, wait a minute, this is not what I want to do with my life. And I now went through the motions of WIAC. So when it was done, we wanted to apply for school. We said, why not? Why don't we go for, as you would know, a social science course that you can do with your basic science background? God helped me because He also made me part of internet generation. So there were a lot of courses you could do online. There were a lot of free courses you could do. Then was the age of massive open online courses.
Mhm.
So I took advantage of the internet, and they did. countless number of courses online, philosophy, introduction to public speaking, writing, and then all of those. But before that, I had been made an accidental uh, a public policy enthusiast. And then if you take your time to go through some of my work, you will see that what I'm doing did not start today. Because
Mm-hmm.
I was just on my own. I had gone to the proprietor of our school. When I was much younger, it was the norm to wrap your notebooks. Like I have a notebook here. So now this is the cover of my notebook, right? So you were
Yes.
expected to wrap it up with an old almanac or something so that it
Yes.
doesn't get
Yes.
through. That was how I
Yes.
went to borrow an old almanac from our school proprietor. We call him Daddy School. He's now late, but I remember him fondly. So I went to borrow old almanacs from him to wrap my notebooks, and he said, Shima, I don't have old almanacs. If you're interested, I can give you old newspapers. I said, old almanacs, old newspapers, same purpose. So I gladly took the old newspapers with my friend Ebuka, and we wrapped our notebooks. But something happened that I find myself during classes, instead of focusing on what they are teaching us, I find myself reading the newspapers in my
Feel this.
notebooks. And this started, I think, either in primary three or so. And I remember reading newspapers. I can't remember at what age, but maybe even younger than that. So, and then things with newspapers, they write a story and then they say continued on page 13, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I would tear all my books in search of page
Okay.
13.
Looking for
And
it.
eventually, oh yeah, and that's how I started reading. So I find myself going to his house, going to the school library to borrow old newspapers. So I read newspapers almost every day of my life from primary school to secondary school. If there were days I missed reading the newspaper, it was just you can count them by the fingers of your hands. Even when I left secondary school, there was this man close to our house. I go to his house, I borrow, I go to the public library, I read. So because of that, I seem to know a lot about public policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you see those things in the newspaper. And that kind of was my early formation because there was no way you are going to read about the daily miseries of Nigerians and knowing so well what the problems were, who the political actors were, and possibly what the solutions were. And
Mm-hmm.
but why are we not doing it? So without that itching to get involved, so that's how I got involved accidentally, or if you want, by design,
By
by God's
design.
design. I got involved because if, for instance, I keep saying, if you had supplied me with almanac, perhaps I would not
Mm-hmm.
have gotten interested in
Mm-hmm.
reading newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did not consume that amount of literature, public policy literature while growing up, perhaps I would not be interested in some of it. So that's how I eventually got interested in what I'm doing. And I've been doing that now for 9 years. That I believe that Africa's morning will come. And then when I say that, I don't say it as a cliche. I know what God has shown me concerning Africa. But He has also told me that it is people who make it happen. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why we are working hard because He has given us all the grace, the resources, mental, intellectual, possibly financial resources. Everything Africa needs to develop is in Africa today. It's just that we have to harness those things to make Africa work. So when you see me burning with this desire, it's not just to see Nigeria work, it's just to see that Nigeria works and model the rest for Africa.
We'll have the common interest in people, and that Africa the money will come. It will come,
Yeah.
and I strongly believe that because there's so much God invested in the continent itself, the resources, the people. It's just amazing. And of course, because of the abundance of what we have, that's why also evil is interested in there too.
Yeah.
Because you can't have all that abundance sitting around and you're sitting on it. You got to have other forces playing here, and
Yes.
which is where we're going to be heading in a minute. So I'm glad that we're both here. We have a passion for God's creation and passion for Nigeria, passion for Africa and its people and the resources. So I'm glad we're having this dialogue. I've heard the word conscience quite a bit in some dialogue on Rufai in I think in Arise TV. One day I was watching his presentation talking about the politicians and talking about conscience if you have a conscience. And then I think in some of your writings too, you have alluded to people, taking control of their own responsibility in terms of societal development. So I talk about this quite a bit about the conscience and its role in our in executing our responsibility as human beings. And when the conscience is corroded, then we lose our moral compass. And so I'll share my PowerPoint screen with you as I speak on this. And if you have anything you want to interject, please kindly do so. This is I'm somebody who is open to learning. I learn from every angle, even from bees that fly in the sky. I learn from them too, because God speaks to us in different ways. I'm very open to criticism, open to whatever it is. If I don't sound right, go ahead, tell me. I'm
That's all
open to
right.
it. That's the way
That's
I
all right.
learn. I
That's
told
all
you I
right.
went to school of hard knocks,
Yes, you told me. Yeah.
where you are
Now,
both.
like, is it knocking you? Are you the one knocking it now?
It goes in that way. You're either learning or you're
Okay.
teaching. You are learning or
Okay.
you're teaching. So that's the school. School of life. You're learning or teaching someone, or you're learning from someone or something. So
Yes.
uh, now I'll share where's my screen share here?